somebody mind, I'm going to sit and do this. I've never done a presentation sitting down, but we're going to try, all right? So how many people in the room, we did a summit back in December. How many people in the room attended the SD-WAN summit that we had uptown a little bit? All right, so some of this, this is new to most of you. All right, so when I talk about SD-WAN, I like to start out and talk about some of the characteristics of SD-WAN, all right? To me, what we've found is that the first thing, the very most important thing, is that we're talking about taking the intelligence out of the hardware and putting it out in the cloud, all right? So the devices that we're deploying at the edge, if we're even deploying something at the edge, has limited intelligence. So gone are the days of having to deploy those routers and then going, patching them, taking care of them, right? The other aspect of SD-WAN is that we have a portal to be able to administer that, all right, key. That portal is not only for administration, but also to be able to take a look at, the statistics around the traffic that's flowing. I think almost all of the different platforms have some way to be able to see how the traffic's flowing, what's going on with it, what are the peak flows, to do analysis of that data, really key. The third characteristics I like to talk about is the fact that it's dynamic. All right, it can be dynamic in a couple of different ways. You can either add to it quickly, you can scale it quickly, but dynamic is key. And then, we look at speed and simplification to deploy. A lot of the times SD-WAN solutions are there because, you can literally take it out of the box, send it down there, phone's home, program it, picks up its programming, new box, replace it. That's really key. And then the last, zero to little CapEx. It fits the model of cloud computing. I break SD-WAN into what I call 4 different flavors of SD-WAN. I'm going to be quick about this, but the first flavor that I like to talk about is broadband or internet aggregation. How many people in the room, when they think of SD-WAN, think of broadband aggregation? Okay, a good percentage of the hands went up. What we're talking about there is bonding multiple circuits together, all right? Being able to leverage those, route traffic down that path on a circuit-by-circuit basis. On a packet-by-packet basis, all right? The second flavor of SD-WAN, we talk about application acceleration, all right? And that typically comes to play when we're talking about very distributed environments, international opportunities, right? Where we're taking the capability of either catching data or optimizing the TCP/IP stream so that we can accelerate that data. Really comes to play in very distributed, a lot of latency in a network. When we started talking SD-WAN, we find that many of our suppliers considered dynamic bandwidth as SD-WAN. And then the last thing that we talk about is network function virtualization. The key component to this is also that we're seeing a lot of the traffic flow is now flowing to cloud providers. And in the past, in an MPLS network, we took all of that data across the MPLS network, brought it back to a headquarters location, and then you would go out via that headquarters location. It's really important now, in the environment with cloud and software as a service, for all of those distributed locations to be able to get out directly to those cloud platforms. Here's a good example of that internet aggregation, which we're finding is probably one of the most important flavors of SD-WAN. And we sort of lay it out with 2 different sites. They'll have multiple connections to their location. They can use that edge device to be able to either travel either of those different connections, all right? The other key component to this, if you look at this diagram, is that there's actually an SD-WAN controller out there. And what that allows us to be able to do is basically bookend that traffic, all right? So they can come out via those different circuits. They're going to go to the SD-WAN controller, and then they're going to jump off via the internet and be able to get to whatever they want, or to be able to get to site B, all right? And they'll create encrypted tunnels between that, all right? Very important to be able to different providers will leverage cloud controllers, or they don't have cloud controllers. And depending on where the data is, this is what we pay attention to. Here's a diagram showing the bookended deployments, all right? You'll see that the LAN basically can come connect up to the cloud-based controller and then be able to get out via that. By year end, Gartner is predicting that more than 40% of the WAN deployments will be SD-WAN based, all right? How many, I have been probably seeing of the opportunities that are coming in the door when it comes to network opportunities. I'd probably say 80 of them have been coming to me and requesting some form of network SD-WAN. So some of the things we should be considering when we're talking about SD-WAN, all right? The first thing, where do I need to deploy this SD-WAN? Are we talking about a regional customer? Are we talking about a highly distributed across the United States, or are we talking about international? Because when we talk about those flavors of SD-WAN, this is really key. Some of our providers can do it international. Some of them are deploying application acceleration, and others are just deploying that internet aggregation. And depending on what you're trying to solve, those different flavors will come to play. Another big thing is to ask the customer, what are they trying to solve? All right, we find that customers, sometimes they're looking at this from a redundancy perspective. You know, they have two different circuits sitting there, they want to bond them together, they want to leverage them. They might have an MPLS network and they just want to be able to take that internet connection and use it with that, all right? Others are trying to replace the MPLS network. You know, the cost is expensive, they're trying to find a better means to be able to do it. We have broadband aggregation, we have wireless, somebody asked about that during our discovery. They want to see how they can put those together to replace the MPLS. Others just want to be able to simplify this, make it easier to administer, get better view and input into it. And then the last thing that we hear all the time is we want to be able to make it faster. We want to be able to do it cheaper. And I'm going to ask this later on to our panel, is SD-WAN really cheaper than an MPLS network? It's not always the case, all right? But what we do find when we start chasing down that is that we find that when they pick up the redundancy, when they pick up the simplification, those benefits and the speed that they pick up more than entice them to be able to go with SD-WAN, all right? Last two things I say that you really need to pay attention to when we start talking about SD-WAN are, where is your traffic, all right? Is it in each individual site? Is the data going there? Is the data going to a cloud provider? Is it going to a co-location provider? Because all of that factors into what's the best solution. And then what are they leveraging as far as firewalls and VPNs today, and are they going to keep that? Are they going to factor this in? How does that play with the SD-WAN solution? Really important to discover and make sure we talk about that with our suppliers. So I want to turn this over to our panel. Before I do that, why don't we go down and introduce yourselves and tell us who you're with, and then we'll jump into some of these questions.
I'm Neely Loring with Matrix. We're focused on cloud computing, infrastructure as a service, and SD-WAN's a big part of the deployments that we're putting out there today.
Scott Kelly, I'm with Windstream. I would say 80% of our conversations are really about SD-WAN today. It's amazing how well this technology is taken off and the amount of discussion that's going on about it.
Victor Hugh, I'm the Global Channel Director with Xperio, responsible for overall Intelisys partnership. But just quick show of hands, how many of you have sold internet in the US? Cool. Hopefully it's going to be 100% of the hands. But that's what's great about working with Xperia. So we do internet across 200 countries and obviously SD-WAN as well. But yeah, talk more about that.
Hey, Ray. I'm Carl Moore. I'm the Vice President of Sales Channels for TPX Communications, which is the nationwide company now with our new branding from Telepacific and DSCI. And we've been in this space since last November now and really see a lot of rapid deployment coast to coast. So it certainly is here.
Hi, my name is Esther McCloof. I'm a solutions architect for Telstra. For those of you that don't know, Telstra has a large foreign CNO joint venture in China. We have one of the larger networks in Asia, and we're here to help American companies that are interested in moving from traditional WAN to SD-WAN networks.
All right. So I'm going to throw the very first question I'm going to throw out there is SD-WAN a replacement for MPLS?
Maybe. I mean, it depends. It's like everything else we always talk about in these events, right? Is you've got to actually put some thought behind what you're deploying, right tool for the job kind of stuff. SD-WAN can be, I mean, there's some notable reasons that you would still use MPLS and would have to, and cost isn't the driving factor. You know, Ray did a great job going through the PowerPoint and a lot of the key things to look at. I think a lot of people are driven by bring a cheap circuit and give me just as good of an experience, you know, that I was paying for with MPLS. You know, redundancy, all those kind of things. So, you know, there are some key questions that PowerPoint, I guess, is probably going out to everybody, is to look in there and look at those. So MPLS is still viable, but it's not the only solution like we've seen. I mean, my 2 cents.
I'd absolutely. Anybody else have an opinion?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it's certainly a discussion point with your customers, right? And earlier in the presentations today was understanding their business, right? They're going to have sections or portions of their network that maybe they don't want to put on SD-WAN, right? MPLS is still great for those opportunities. And, you know, companies like Windstream are certainly capable of mixing a hybrid network. You may have part of it on MPLS, part of it on SD-WAN.
Actually, I think that for those of you that are not familiar who with Xperia is, again, we specialize in providing internet and SD-WAN aggregation across 200 countries around the world. So I think the answer is yes, it can, but in a couple different ways. So just kind of quick summary. So we actually aggregate 4 different types of SD-WAN. So we do Cisco, Ariaka, Viptela, and also Citrix. So actually a combination of that, such as Ariaka, could potentially replace MPLS, or maybe a customer wants to look at a Viptela for a hybrid model where they keep their MPLS with you know, internet as well. So I think there's a combination of solutions that we can uniquely offer, again, 200 countries around the world to solve that.
So Ray, the question was, is it a replacement for MPLS? And I would characterize it more as an alternative to MPLS. There's some considerations from a business perspective, rapid deployment to market, et cetera, that you'd want to consider the pros and cons. But more so, I would characterize, and I think everyone should dig deep for this, that SD-WAN is not a product, okay? It's a technology, okay? And if you start looking at it as a technology and then start to shape the products and services or the benefits, your Venn diagram with all 4 services, that's what TPX subscribes to. We do all 4. So it is a technology, and the product, if you will, or the replacement for MPLS is driven out of the derivatives that the customer needs.
Excellent point. Excellent. So how many people deploy their solution in conjunction with an MPLS? I'm saying carrier-wise. Do everybody deploy it with an MPLS?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see that all the time because it's a both and. You know, it's the shiny new toy that's out there that has to do with network, and it's like the hot topic. I mean, you're go-to-market, you're figuring out how do I take this, how do I turn this into dollars for me? And one of the ways is to begin to integrate it into an existing network that's there. Most of the customers that we talk to, any new technology, it's like, you know, how long's it been out there? Is it going to work? Because at the end of the day, they're way more interested in making sure that their employees can do their job. And if the network's not working, it doesn't matter how good the stuff on the back end is. So, you know, I think in conjunction, something you're definitely going to see. It allows a reliability that's better than having one circuit of MPLS going in there, because then the other can take over.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the things that we recommend at Telstra is that we often ask customers to start with a few sites that they're willing to migrate over to SD-WAN, and normally that will at least have one MPLS link. And because SD-WAN is really about, it's driven by, you know, the digital app world. So primarily what customers want to see is whether some of their business critical apps on the MPLS circuits will be able to handle the internet circuits, you know, without any jitter and latency, and still provide the same end user experience. So you start with a couple of sites, you start to move your business critical apps over the internet circuit, and if that does well, then sometimes customers end up getting rid of the MPLS circuit and, you know, having dual or more internet circuits.
I love the point you bring up, because a lot of the times when I've been on calls, customers have thought, oh, I got to replace my entire network, right? And SD-WAN, being a technology, as you point out, is just something we can deploy, right? We can put one site, leverage that, and then, you know, do something later. Still continue to use the MPLS for all the rest of the network, right? So excellent point. Excellent point. I want to switch the conversation a little bit to, you know, we talk about the technology, right? Some people are using Silver Peak, other people, I think a lot of our suppliers up here are using VeloCloud, right? Raise your hand who's a VeloCloud, right? One of the things, a reason why you probably, I think you guys chose, one, the multi-tenancy is nice, but they also have that cloud controller, right? I talk about that ability to bookend it, which is phenomenal for, you know, live, you know, real-time communications. You can control the in and the out, right? But it also has a downfall, because it comes out to that controller and then it has to go out. So if you're in a regional and you don't have those controllers in the right places, that could be a downfall. Let's talk about that a little bit. When is the right time to use a cloud controller? Is it, any opinions on that?
I think we found most of our customers were not just buying the SD-WAN service from Windstream, they were also buying other services, UCaaS, hosted voice, et cetera. So those regional access points are VeloCloud gateways that we had deployed in our own infrastructure, gave us direct access to those services privately for those customers if they wanted it, right? So it gave us some flexible deployment options.
Okay.
For Xperia, I think our approach is a little bit different than traditional global carriers, because we don't have a backbone. We are, again, the world's largest internet aggregator. So I think our approach is less about supporting a global backbone, where you know, we're giving customer options. If they want to look at, you know, traditional MPLS-like infrastructure, we'll look at an Ariaka solution. If they want to look at, you know, potentially leverage, some people are Cisco shops, right? A lot of your customers have Cisco, and we'll look at an IWAN. And so I think all the SD-WAN solution for us, the reason why we picked the 4 that we did, again, Cisco, Viptela, Ariaka, and Citrix, is because they have global distribution. Meaning, you know, if you ship a box to, you don't have to ship a box to internationally. And so it's kind of, depending on what your customer needs are, that's what we support.
So we took the same approach in deploying our gateways as we did for our geo-redundant UCaaS platform. And I think that's important to understand that distribution and how we made that decision. Yes, we went with VeloCloud, but there's 2 options if you look at VeloCloud. If you go with them directly and there's a service offering, or if you deploy it and embed it in your infrastructure yourselves and own it and control that technology. So deploying it in that fashion for geo-redundancy is, if anyone is familiar with the active environment, that's very key and critical to have that flexibility to do everything you might want to do at that particular location.
So you guys actually, you're using VeloCloud's gateways, or you've deployed your gateway?
We've deployed it in our own infrastructure,
in your,
right? Which is a little different spin on what most people are doing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I want to weigh in on that, because we've got customers that kind of do both, right? So for Velo, you can go one of 2 ways. You can, you know, have your own gateways like they were talking about, or then they have other gateways in major data centers all over the world. And it goes back to what we were saying before, where it kind of depends, right? So when you begin to deploy this, kind of the why question that you take away is, how am I going to use it? So if, for example, you're a voice over IP company and you're deploying SD-WAN, you want to have your own because you want to provide the very best experience for your product. The why question, the what question that you take away is to say what other traffic is running over that. And I think that that's going to depend on every customer that you talk to. Is we're prioritizing this traffic over a public internet. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's the public internet versus something that's private, that's more controllable in some ways. And so you can do it either way, which I think gives you flexibility. But I think you got to go from the 10,000-foot view of, do we want to put SD-WAN in, as to what are we trying to accomplish by deploying the technology.
Okay. I get asked this question an awful lot, and I'd love to hear our supplier's response, right? We talk to a customer. I do it with our sales partner, right? And the customer turns around and says, why don't I just buy the equipment? Why do I need you? Why do I need the service? What's your response to that?
So again, we look at this as part of our ITX product services.
Okay.
And the discussions all this morning were around the migration to managed services, the opportunities before the crowd here today. So again, thinking that it is a technology, not a product, what we're selling is everything that goes around it. One of the unique value propositions we offer is, yes, we'll sell it with our MPLS, but we will also go in carrier agnostic and connect it to any of your incumbent providers in the network. We don't care who that is. Who better to do a fair and balanced analysis of the circuits and those behavior than a third party independently looking at it? If you're buying it from the same person you're buying the circuit, there could be some distortion in the results that you're getting. So the answer is, yeah, having a third party look at it. And then, do you want them to open the trouble tickets, shoot the troubles, fix what's going on with those ISPs? If you decide to buy the boxes, then you're managing that portion of it. And that's, quite frankly, the most distasteful part to customers, is that repair and service. And certainly if you're in the MSP business and you wanted to get into this model, you really don't want to spend all your time speaking with the underlying CLECs and cable providers fixing your ISP service. So that's why you wouldn't want to do it yourself. You'd want to partner with someone strategically. And as we know, this is all managed services. So,
Fair enough.
Yeah, as part of Windstream Service, we built what we're calling a Concierge Service, right? We understand that there's going to be certain partners that want to have control of their services, but you're going to have places like dental offices, pizza places, other restaurants, that networking is not their core business, right? So they want to rely on a partner like Windstream in this concierge service where they can get in there and say, hey, I'm having problems with this network, or the concierge are taking a proactive look at the network. They're dedicated, looking at their network all the time, adjusting protocols. It really makes a differentiator from the other offerings out there by doing this. But you can also come back to those more technical customers and say, look, we can do a mixed management. You can manage it, make changes on their network. If you get stuck, we can also help you.
So Ray, I think that's actually a great question, and so I have some feedback, on that from a lot of customers we talk to every day. So I hear a lot from customers that they think that if they now go out and buy Cisco routers, they have an MPLS network. That's not really how it works, right? Again, the same thing with SD-WAN is, I think, we've worked with, actually, we won a project with one of the partners for American Express. American Express has hundreds of engineers, and if you're in American Express, yes, you probably have a lot of engineers and expertise in-house to manage SD-WAN yourself. So, but there's a couple components to SD-WAN. So when let's just say you do have the expertise to manage the equipment or even the managed service part, where are you going to get the internet connectivity, the diversity from your MPLS, right? Or who's going to do rack and stack, cabling, and feet on the street for all these boxes for you globally? So I think there's a couple components to managing the overall SD-WAN process. And then also, I think a lot of customers maybe want to buy the equipment themselves, but then want somebody else to manage it. So I think customers nowadays just want options. So again, some of your customers are a little bit larger, they can manage it themselves, some of them cannot, and you want to find a partner that can kind of be flexible and work with you, fit all those kind of criteria. So
the way I see it is you're not selling SD-WAN. When you're talking to your clients, you're selling an experience. The further we go down this technology continuum and pick whichever one it is, data center services, whatever, people are becoming more specialized in their individual areas. It used to be I had a couple of people and they did whatever it was and ran everything. And and it's great that software has made us so much more efficient, but I can tell you on the back end it's way more difficult. And the people that y'all are talking to don't want another thing to have to be responsible for. I believe that managed services and a managed experience is absolutely the way that you ought to be addressing this, because you're fixing a problem, and it's kind of set it and forget it. And what I mean by that is you put the box in and you tune it and you go through it and you monitor and you proactively can manage the traffic. And when I say you, I'm really talking about us. But it keeps the customer proactively happy. I mean, they're not going to have, as you were just saying, a whole team of people watching their SD-WAN. And we're in the mid-market, we don't do global implementations. We spend most of our time in the mid-market and find that those customers want the solutions that the FedExes of the world are able to deploy and make them so much better, but our customers aren't FedEx. Our customers are the one I need the really good stuff so that I can be better than the guy down the street that sells the same thing that I do, and I need you to do it and fix it and just make it work. And that's where I think it's a managed service. Whether it's SD-WAN or any other product we talk about today, sell the experience. That's what's going to close the deal and put money in both of our pockets.
So true. In conjunction with that, and I think, Victor, you sort of brought up the fact of they want to, they don't want to manage all of the circuits and stuff like that. One thing I run into on every one of these deals, the customer turns around and says, all right, I want to leverage SD-WAN. I have these circuits in place today, right? I already have a big internet circuit. I already have backup. I have wireless. How do you guys fit that into your solution? Will you let a customer bring what they have to the table? Do you have to procure it? Is it strictly your network? Do they manage it? Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a big part of this.
Yes. They can bring their own stuff. I mean, that's the way to get in here. Again, it's selling an experience. And so if they already have circuits, it's a way to begin to dive into the network. It may be that the people in this room brought the circuits that they're currently running on, and you're putting an add-on. You're beginning to enhance the services that you've already sold to them, which gives them another reason to keep coming back to you, other conversations. We're agnostic too. It doesn't matter. I mean, we don't sell bandwidth. I think that's y'all's job. For most people in this room, that's what you're bringing, that's what you're selling, and we want to piggyback on that and have a better experience than they did yesterday.
So you bring the box, you bring the services, use whatever is there.
Yep.
So, obviously, it'd be great if, we went into every customer to rip and replace everything. Obviously, that's not realistic from contractually or just, cost perspective. So, for us, we can't provide new circuits, but we can also take over existing circuits on a global basis because we manage 3,000 providers. So, yeah, I think that gives us a pretty, especially, again, it doesn't have to be a global, large enterprise customer. It could be domestic or a combination of both. So we can take over management and support of existing circuits globally, so then they still have a single point of contact and overlay on top of their existing network. So.
I think a lot of times you guys have run into customers who have got in a time crunch, right? Opening a new store, a new location. My MPLS circuit's going to take 45 days, right? Maybe I'm in a mall location or other office location, and they're going to give me a free 100 meg Ethernet loop, right? SD-WAN gives you that opportunity to quickly go in there and solve that solution for them, right? Turn it up quickly, connect it back to their existing MPLS network or whatever options that they do have, and then it gets you that foot in the door, right? Then you start peeling off the other parts of their network and helping them with the problems that they're having.
Yeah, I guess what you have to remember is that SD-WAN is an overlay technology. So, that gives the power to the customer to be able to keep hold of their existing circuits, procure their own. They have a choice because they're not locked into the hardware itself. And so Telstra offers a virtual or a physical appliance, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud. And this plugs into our global network, which, you know, we have 2,000 POPs around the world. So if a customer says, look, I'm a retail customer, I've got a couple of sites that locations in Asia, I don't really, know how to go about it. Well, again, because it's SD-WAN is an overlay technology, it means that the customer can procure their own circuits in Asia, whether that be internet or MPLS internet, and then be able to connect back into the backbone of the network over a software-defined network back to the US locations. And again, that can be done at their own will, or it could be done virtually or physically.
All right. Well, that was some very interesting analysis of SD-WAN. We're unfortunately out of time on this one. I really encourage you guys during the vendor break, go out, talk to them, ask the questions. Hopefully we cleared up some of the questions in your head. I don't think a 30-minute panel is going to answer everything, but hopefully that was some good insight. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
All right.